The coins clinked against Mother's chipped teacup like 30 pieces of silver. 28 years old, Mother announced to Harlan Briggs, her voice carrying across the dusty town square. Past marriageable age, but her back still strong. Anna stood perfectly still, her only good calico dress hanging loose on her thinning frame. The wooden sidewalk beneath her feet might have been an auction block. Neighbors pretended not to watch from shop windows. Briggs circled her slowly, his greased Prince Albert coat catching the morning light. "Let me see your hands." She extended them, keeping her chin level despite the burning shame. Rough, reddened, honest hands. "Teeth," he commanded. The word nearly broke her resolve. Around them, the kerosene street lamps from last night's revelries stood like witnesses to her humiliation. Mother fingered the bills in her apron pocket. $200, Briggs declared. 3-year indenture. Mother's eager nod sealed Anna's fate. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Wade Morrison had been nursing the same cup of Arbuckle's coffee for an hour on the hotel porch, watching the morning commerce of the town unfold through the painted glass windows behind him. The bitter brew had gone cold, but he hadn't come to town for refreshment. The raised voices drew his attention first, a woman's shrill proclamation about past marriageable age, cutting through the general murmur of market day. He set down his cup slowly, his weathered hands steady as he observed the scene developing in the square below. A young woman stood between an older woman and a man in a stained Prince Albert coat. Even from 30 yards away, Wade could read the situation, the rigid spine of the younger woman, the older one's grasping gestures, the buyer's proprietary circling. He'd seen enough cattle auctions to recognize a sale when he witnessed one, but this was no cattle auction. Wade rose from his chair, the worn leather of his Jefferson boots creaking as he stood. He'd drifted through enough towns to know when to mind his own business. This wasn't one of those times. The girl woman, he corrected himself. Noting her bearing despite her circumstances, had just opened her mouth to show her teeth to the buyer. The humiliation radiated from her like heat from a forge. He descended the hotel steps deliberately, his spurs singing a metallic rhythm against the boardwalk. The small crowd that had gathered parted instinctively. Wade had that effect on people not from any deliberate menace, but from the quiet authority of a man who'd lived hard and survived to tell about it. $200, the buyer was saying as Wade approached. 3-year indenture. She'll work the kitchen and garden at my ranch. Mr. Briggs, Wade said quietly, and all three turned to face him. The older woman's eyes lit with calculation. Briggs's narrowed with suspicion, but the young woman's remained carefully blank, as if she'd retreated somewhere deep inside herself. Morrison, Briggs acknowledged warily. This is private business. So I see. Wade reached into his vest pocket, his movements unhurried. What would you say to $400 for the lady's contract? Briggs' eyes widened. The mother gasped. The young woman finally looked directly at him, confusion breaking through her careful composure. You trying to snake my deal? Morrison, Briggs growled, but his eyes were fixed on Wade's hands as they emerged from his pocket. Not snaking anything, making you a better offer. Wade produced a leather fold, thick with bills. 400, cash money, here and now. He began counting out the bills onto his palm greenbacks mixed with double eagles, the gold coins catching the morning sun. 340, 360, 380, 400. The money seemed to hypnotize Briggs, whose protest died in his throat. But she's already agreed, the mother started. No, Wade said simply. She hasn't agreed to anything. You agreed. And now I'm offering Mr. Briggs double his money? That's good business by any measure. Briggs looked between the money and the young woman, calculating. Wade could see him weighing pride against profit. Profit won, as Wade had known it would. I'll need a bill of sale, Briggs said, reaching for the money. Already had one drawn up. Wade produced a folded sheet of foolscap from his coat. Had a feeling I might be making a purchase today. The exchange was completed with indecent haste. Briggs counted the money twice, signed the paper with the stub of a pencil produced from his pocket, and thrust the document at Wade. "She's yours, then. Good luck getting any useful work from her. Her own mother says she's past her prime." Wade didn't respond to the insult. He simply folded the bill of sale and placed it in his pocket, then finally turned to face the young woman properly. She stood frozen, her face pale beneath the prairie sun. "Miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat, "you're free to go wherever you please. But you just paid." Her voice was rusty, as if she hadn't used it in days. "I paid to end that man's claim on you. You don't owe me anything. Not one thing." He started to turn away, then paused. "Though if you're hungry, the hotel serves a decent noon meal. You look like you could use it." "I don't understand," she said, and there was something desperate in her voice now. "Why would you—" "Because someone needed to," Wade said simply. "And I could." The mother had been watching this exchange with growing alarm. "Now wait just a minute. Anna is my daughter. I have rights." "You just sold those rights, ma'am." Wade's voice remained level, but there was steel beneath it. "For $200, which I noticed you've already pocketed. The transaction is complete." He turned back to Anna. "The offer of a meal stands. Miss, no obligations. Just food and a chance to sit somewhere quiet and figure out what you want to do next." Anna looked between Wade, her mother clutching the money in her apron pocket, and Briggs already heading toward the saloon. Around them, the townspeople who'd pretended not to watch were slowly dispersing. The morning's entertainment concluded. "Bye," Anna started, then stopped. She took a breath, seemed to gather herself from some deep place, and met Wade's eyes properly for the first time. "I accept your offer of a meal, Mr. Morrison." "Wade Morrison." "Mr. Morrison." She tested the name carefully, as if it might break. "I'm Anna Thorne. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Thorne." He offered his arm, not presumptuously, but as any gentleman might to any lady. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. As they walked toward the hotel, leaving her mother standing speechless in the dusty square, Wade felt Anna's hand trembling against his arm. He didn't comment on it, just adjusted his pace to match hers, giving her time to realize what had just happened. She'd been sold by her mother and bought by a stranger, all before the noon bell. But for the first time in what Wade suspected had been a very long time, she was walking towards something of her own choosing, even if it was just a simple meal. The hotel's painted windows reflected them as they passed a weathered cowboy and a thin woman in a faded calico dress. To anyone watching, they might have been any two people meeting for lunch. But Wade knew better. He'd just changed the course of two lives with a handful of gold and paper. The question now was what Anna Thorne would choose to do with her unexpected freedom. The hotel restaurant was nearly empty at this hour, caught between the breakfast crowd and the noon rush. Anna sat across from Wade Morrison at a corner table, her hands folded carefully in her lap, trying to make sense of the past hour. The china plates with their blue willow patterns seemed impossibly fine after months of eating from cracked earthenware. Through the window, she caught sight of her mother's familiar figure hurrying down the street, clutching her shawl and presumably the $200 tight against her chest. Their eyes met for one brief moment through the glass. Her mother's face hardened. Then she deliberately turned away, her back rigid with indignation as she disappeared around the corner of the Mercantile. Anna's throat constricted. After 28 years. That was to be their parting no words, no embrace, just the exchange of money and abandonment. "The beef here is good," Wade said quietly, drawing her attention back to the present. He'd already ordered for them both without asking. But Anna couldn't bring herself to mind. Decision-making felt beyond her capabilities at the moment. When the food arrived, beefsteak with oyster sauce, roasted potatoes, Parker House rolls still warm from the oven, Anna stared at it as if she'd forgotten what to do with such bounty. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had meat that wasn't stretched thin in a watery stew. "Please," Wade said, gesturing to her plate. "Eat." The first bite nearly undid her. The meat was tender, flavorful, substantial. She forced herself to eat slowly, deliberately, though her stomach cramped with want. Wade attended to his own meal without watching her, for which she was grateful. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, exactly, but heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, when she'd managed half the meal and could think beyond her immediate hunger, Anna set down her fork. "Mr. Morrison, I need to understand what you want from me." He looked up from his plate, his weathered face unreadable. "That's fair." He pushed his own plate aside, took a sip of coffee, seemed to consider his words. "I have a homestead claim about 3 days northwest of here. 160 acres under the Homestead Act. Been working it alone for 2 years. Anna nodded slowly. She knew about the Homestead Act, 5 years of improvement and cultivation to earn the deed free and clear. "The thing is," Wade continued, "one man alone can only do so much. I can manage the cattle, keep up with basic repairs, but the place needs more than that to properly prove up. Garden, chickens, maybe some dairy cows. Someone who knows how to preserve food for winter, keep accounts proper." He paused. "Someone who can make it look like a real home instead of just a place where a man sleeps between working. And you want me to be that someone?" It wasn't a question. "I'm offering you a business proposition. Miss Thorne, you help me prove up the claim, and I'll provide you with room, board, and a quarter share of any profits from the sale of crops or livestock. After the 5 years are done, if you want to leave, I'll pay you fair wages for your time enough to set yourself up somewhere proper." Anna studied his face, searching for the trap. "And what else would you expect from me?" Wade met her gaze directly. "Nothing you're not willing to give. You'll have your own room, the house has 2, and I've been using one for storage. We'd be business partners, nothing more and less." He trailed off, then started again more firmly. "Nothing more. Your reputation's your own concern, but I give you my word I won't compromise it. People will talk anyway. A woman and a man, unmarried, living on the same property. People always talk. Question is whether you care what they say." Anna considered this. After this morning's humiliation, what reputation did she have left to protect? "Why would you do this? You could hire any number of women to keep house for less than a quarter share." Wade was quiet for a moment. "You stood there this morning while your own mother sold you, and you didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't break. Just stood there with your chin up and took whatever came." He turned his coffee cup in its saucer, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristic for such steady hands. "My wife was like that, strong in ways that had nothing to do with physical strength. Cholera took her and our son 8 years ago. Since then, I've been drifting, working other men's ranches, saving money. The homestead was supposed to be a new start, but it's lonely." Anna finished softly. "It's lonely," he agreed. "And maybe I saw something in you this morning that reminded me what it's like to have someone to work alongside. Not for, but with. There's a difference." Anna absorbed this information, the shape of his loss and her opportunity becoming clearer. "What if I can't do what you need? I've never lived on a homestead. I know kitchen gardens and housework. But cattle field crops. You can learn. I did. Wasn't born knowing how to string barbed wire or deliver a calf. Someone taught me. I can teach you." He leaned back in his chair. "The question is whether you want to try. And if I say no, then you finish your meal, and I give you enough money to take the stage to wherever you want to go. Denver, maybe, or Kansas City, somewhere big enough to start over." Anna looked around the restaurant at the Harvey House-style uniformed waitress, the traveling salesman at another table reading his newspaper, the normal flow of life that had nothing to do with her. Through the window, the town square was busy with afternoon commerce, but she had no place in it anymore. "When would we leave?" she heard herself asking. "Tomorrow morning, if you're willing. Give you time to gather any belongings you might have. Maybe pick up a few supplies." He pulled out his leather fold again, extracted several bills. "This should cover what you need: clothes, personal items, Consider it an advance against your share. Anna stared at the money on the table, more than she'd seen in years. You'd trust me with this, I could take it and run. You could, Wade agreed. But you won't. How do you know? Because you're already calculating what supplies would be most useful for a homestead. I can see it in your eyes. He was right. She was already thinking about preservation jars. Good thread. Perhaps some laying hens if they could manage them on the journey. Your own room, she said, needing to hear it again. Your own room, he confirmed. Lock on the door if you want it. Fair share of profits. In writing, if you prefer. And I can leave whenever I choose. Whenever you choose, though I hope you'll give it at least through harvest season. Only fair. Anna took a deep breath, feeling as if she stood on the edge of a cliff. But then, she'd already been pushed off one cliff this morning. At least this time, she was choosing to jump. All right, Mr. Morrison. I accept your proposition. Wade extended his hand across the table, not the casual gesture of a man hiring help, but the solemn shake of one partner to another. After a moment's hesitation, Anna took it. His hand was calloused and warm, the grip firm but not crushing. Wade, he said, if we're going to be partners, you should call me Wade. Anna, she replied, though he already knew her name. They released hands, and Wade pushed the money across to her. There's a decent general store 2 streets over. Mrs. Goldman runs it. She'll treat you fair. I'll arrange for a room for you here tonight. Then we'll leave at first light. Anna pocketed the money carefully, still half expecting someone to tell her this was all a mistake or a cruel joke. But Wade was already standing, placing money on the table for their meal. Thank you for the food, she said. First of many meals we'll share, I expect. He touched his hat brim. I'll meet you here at dawn. We've got a long road ahead. As he left the restaurant, Anna remained at the table, watching through the window as he walked away with that particular rolling gait of a man more comfortable in the saddle than on foot. She'd just agreed to travel into the wilderness with a complete stranger, to live on his property, to build something from nothing but prairie grass and hope. Her mother would call her a fool. The proper ladies of the town would call her worse. But for the first time in years, Anna felt something other than despair. It might have been hope, or simply the absence of hopelessness. Either way, it was enough to build on. Tomorrow, she would leave everything she'd known and head into the unknown with a man who'd bought her freedom for reasons she didn't fully understand. It should have terrified her. Instead, she signaled the waitress for more coffee and began making a mental list of supplies. The Springfield wagon lurched over another rut, and Anna gripped the wooden seat to keep from sliding into Wade. 3 days into their journey northwest, she'd learned to read the rhythm of the prairie the way the wheels found their own path through the buffalo grass. The constant sway that had made her sick the first morning, but now felt almost natural. Storm coming, Wade said, pointing to the western horizon where clouds piled like gray wool against the sky. See how the bottom's gone flat. That means wind. Maybe rain by evening. Anna studied the formation, trying to memorize the signs. Over the past 2 days, Wade had been teaching her to read the prairie's language, how certain birds meant water nearby, how the grass changed color before rain, how to tell direction by the sun's angle and the wind's patterns. Will we need to stop? She asked. No. We should reach the homestead before it hits. Maybe 2 hours more. 2 hours until she saw her new home. The thought sent a mixture of anticipation and dread through her stomach. The money Wade had given her had bought practical things: 2 sturdy calico dresses, a warm shawl, undergarments, soap, thread, and needles. She'd also purchased a small bag of laying hens that clucked irritably in their crate tied to the wagon's back, and seed packets that Mrs. Goldman had pressed into her hands, insisting they'd be necessary. The landscape had been changing gradually throughout the morning. The endless grass gave way to occasional draws where cottonwoods clustered around hidden water, and low ridges that provided subtle definition to the land. Wade had been largely quiet during the journey. not from unfriendliness, but from what seemed to be his natural state. He answered her questions thoroughly, but didn't fill the silence with unnecessary talk. "There," he said suddenly, pointing ahead. "That's the border of the claim." Anna saw nothing distinctive at first, then noticed a line of fence posts marching across the prairie, the barbed wire between them catching the afternoon light like spider silk. "You fenced it all?" she asked, impressed. "Just the boundaries so far, and a smaller pasture for the horses. Rest is open range for the cattle." He guided the team along the fence line. "House is just over that rise." When they crested the small hill, Anna got her first look at what would be her home. It wasn't what she'd expected. The structure seemed to grow from the earth itself. The back half was built into a hillside, clearly a soddy with its characteristic thick walls of stacked prairie sod. But the front half was frame construction, raw lumber weathering to gray, with a real shingled roof instead of the sod roof she'd feared. "Built the soddy first," Wade explained, following her gaze. "Lived in it for a year while I saved for lumber. Added the frame addition last spring." There was a small barn, also frame construction, and a chicken coop that looked freshly built. A vegetable garden plot had been turned but not planted, the dark soil looking rich after the endless grass. A well with a proper windmill stood between the house and barn. "It's more than I expected," Anna said honestly. "It's rough," Wade replied, but she heard pride beneath the dismissive words. "Needs work." He pulled the wagon up to the front door, a real door, not just a blanket or hide covering, and set the brake. "Let me show you inside before we unload." And the door opened into the frame addition, which served as a kitchen and living area. An Acme Royal cookstove dominated one wall, its nickel trim tarnished but intact. A handmade table with 2 chairs, shelves holding a sparse collection of dishes and supplies, and a rocking chair near the single window completed the furnishings. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust. But the bones were good. "Your room," Wade said, opening a door to the right. Anna stepped into what had clearly been a storage room until recently. Wade had moved the supplies out, leaving a narrow bed with a straw mattress, a small dresser that had seen better days, and surprisingly, a real glass window that looked out over the garden plot. The floor was wood plank, not dirt, and the walls were properly plastered. "The soddy part is my room and cold storage," Wade explained. "Stays cooler in summer, warmer in winter. You'll want the frame room better light, more air." "It's perfect," Anna said, and meant it. After months of sleeping in the same room as her mother, listening to complaints and recriminations, this small private space felt like a palace. They spent the rest of the afternoon unloading the wagon. The storm Wade had predicted rolled in just as they finished, bringing sheets of rain that drummed against the roof. Anna set about making supper on the Acme Royal, which proved to have its own temperamental personality. The damper stuck. The firebox door needed to be held just so, and the oven ran hot on one side. Her first attempt at cornbread came out burned on one edge and raw in the middle. She stood staring at the disaster, fighting tears of frustration. She couldn't even manage a simple meal. "What use would she be on a homestead? Stove takes some learning," Wade said mildly, scraping the edible parts onto plates. "Took me 3 months before I could bake anything decent. Secret is to turn the pan halfway through and keep the firebox even small wood, not big chunks." He showed her the stove's quirks without condescension, and they ate the salvageable cornbread with beans he'd had soaking since morning. The rain continued through the evening, and they sat at the table with the Montgomery Ward catalog Wade had produced, planning what supplies they'd need for the season ahead. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Anna woke disoriented, then remembered where she was. Through her window, she could see Wade already working near the barn. She dressed quickly and found coffee already made on the stove, strong and bitter, but hot. After breakfast, Wade announced they'd need to repair a section of fence where cattle had broken through. "I'll need to learn," Anna said, though the thought of working with barbed wire intimidated her. Wade fetched tools from the barn wire stretchers, pliers, heavy leather gloves that swallowed Anna's hands. They rode out to the broken section on horseback, Anna clinging uncertainly to the saddle of the gentle mare Wade had assigned her. The fence was a mess. 3 posts down and wire tangled like angry brambles. Wade showed her how to extract the broken pieces safely, how to read the patent stamps on the wire that told its manufacture date and origin. But when Anna tried to attach new wire to the post, she wrapped it wrong, and the barbed points caught her palm through a thin spot in the oversized glove. Blood welled instantly, and she jerked back, ashamed of her clumsiness. "I'm sorry, let me see." Wade took her hand gently, examined the wound. It wasn't deep, but it bled freely. He pulled a clean bandana from his pocket and wrapped it carefully. "Happens to everyone at first. Wire's got a mind of its own." He showed her again, slower this time, how to hold the wire with the pliers, how to wrap it tight around the post without leaving slack or getting caught by the barbs. Anna tried again with her unbandaged hand, managing 3 wraps before Wade had to correct her grip. "Better," he said. "By end of summer, you'll be able to do this in your sleep." They worked until noon, Anna's shoulders aching from the unfamiliar effort. Her wrapped hand throbbed, but she didn't complain. When they returned to the house, she insisted on making lunch despite the injury. The stove cooperated better this time, perhaps sensing her determination. That evening established what would become their routine. After supper, they sat with coffee Anna was already growing accustomed to its bitter strength and planned the next day's work. Wade sketched out the homestead's boundaries on a piece of brown paper, marking where he wanted to expand the garden, where they might build a root cellar, where the cattle typically gathered. "Tomorrow we'll start on the garden," he said. "Get those seeds in while the soil's still moist from the rain." Anna nodded, studying her bandaged hand. The wound had stopped bleeding, but it would leave a scar, her first mark from the homestead. Strangely, she didn't mind. It felt like a badge of sorts, proof that she was trying, learning, becoming something more than the useless woman her mother had sold. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "for being patient, for teaching me." Wade looked up from his sketches, seeming surprised. "You worked hard today, harder than some men I've hired. The knowledge will come." "I want to be useful," Anna admitted. "I need to be." "You will be," Wade said with quiet certainty. "Already are. House feels different with someone else in it. Better." They sat in comfortable silence after that, the lamp casting a warm circle of light around the table. Outside, coyotes called in the distance, and the wind whispered through the grass. Anna's hand ached, her shoulders hurt, and she'd never been more exhausted. She'd also never felt more purposeful. Tomorrow there would be more to learn: the garden, the chickens, the endless tasks of homestead life. But tonight, she sat across from a man who believed she could learn it all, in a house that was beginning to feel like it might someday be home. The transformation from the woman who'd stood in the town square being sold had begun. Each blister, each mistake, each small success was building something new. Anna Thorne was becoming someone who belonged to herself, one lesson at a time. 6 weeks had passed since Anna arrived at the homestead, and the morning routines that had once overwhelmed her now flowed with practiced ease. She woke before dawn without Wade having to knock on her door, dressed in the half-light, and had coffee brewing before he returned from checking the livestock. This particular morning carried the sweet smell of approaching rain, and Anna knew they'd need to work quickly. She set the sourdough starter aside after feeding it a living thing that required daily attention, like everything else on the homestead, and began the morning's butter making. The centrifugal cream separator had mystified her at first, its metal drum and nested discs seeming impossibly complex. Wade had traded 2 calves for it the previous year, he'd told her, considering it essential for any profitable dairy operation. Now Anna's hands moved confidently through the process, pouring fresh milk into the bowl, turning the crank at just the right speed to send cream flowing from one spout and skim milk from another. The butter churn came next, the cream splashing rhythmically as she worked the dasher up and down. She'd learned to listen for the change in sound that meant the butter was forming. to feel the difference in resistance that signaled it was ready. When the pale yellow clumps finally gathered, she worked them with the paddle Wade had carved, washing away the buttermilk and adding just enough salt. "That's a week's worth of butter ready for town," she said with satisfaction as Wade entered the kitchen. He examined her work, nodding approval. "You've got the touch for it. Mrs. Henderson at the Mercantile will pay good money for butter this quality." Anna felt warmth spread through her chest at the praise. Each small success built upon the last, creating a foundation of competence she'd never possessed in her mother's house. "I want to learn to ride properly today," she announced, surprising herself with the boldness of the request. Wade paused in reaching for the coffee pot. "You sure weather's coming?" "That's why I need to learn. What if something happens when you're away? What if the cattle need moving and I can't help?" He studied her for a moment, then smiled, a rare occurrence that transformed his weathered face. "All right. After breakfast." An hour later, Anna stood beside Sally, the gentle bay mare that had become her favorite. Wade had produced a side saddle from the barn, its leather worn but well-maintained. "Traded for this last month in town," he admitted, seeming almost embarrassed. "Figured you'd want to ride proper eventually." The saddle had a safety stirrup and pommel designed to keep a lady secure while maintaining propriety. Anna had ridden a few times back home as a girl, but never with any real skill. Under Wade's patient instruction, she learned to mount from a wooden block he'd placed beside the corral, to arrange her skirts properly, to hold the reins with confidence rather than desperate grip. "Don't fight her," Wade coached, walking alongside as Sally moved at a sedate walk around the corral. "She knows what she's doing. Your job is to tell her where to go, not how to get there." By midday, Anna was riding circles independently, even managing a controlled trot that made her feel both terrified and exhilarated. Wade watched from the fence, calling occasional corrections about her posture or hand position. "You're ready to try something useful," he decided. "The cattle need moving to the north pasture. Storm's going to hit the south section hardest." Anna's stomach fluttered with nerves, but she nodded. They rode out together, Wade on his rangy gelding, Anna trying to look more confident than she felt. The small herd, 15 head of longhorns and their calves, grazed peacefully in a draw about a mile from the house. "Key is to move slow," Wade instructed. "Cattle don't like to be rushed. We'll ease around behind them. Encourage them along. Sally knows the work, trust her." The first attempt was clumsy. Anna came in too fast, scattering 2 cows who broke away from the group. But Sally, true to Wade's word, seemed to anticipate the cattle's movements. The mare shifted beneath Anna, guiding more than being guided, and somehow the strays rejoined the herd. Thunder rumbled in the distance as they pushed the cattle up the gentle slope toward the north pasture. The animals grew restless, sensing the storm, and began to move faster. One young bull turned back suddenly, testing Anna's position on the flank. "Hold your ground," Wade called. "Don't let him past you." Anna turned Sally to face the bull, her heart pounding. The mare pinned her ears, taking an aggressive step toward the challenger. The bull thought better of his rebellion and wheeled back to the herd. Anna felt a surge of triumph that made her laugh out loud. They got the cattle through the gate just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. Wade swung down to fasten the gate, and when he looked up at Anna, still mounted and flushed with success, his expression held something she hadn't seen before, genuine surprised approval mixed with what might have been pride. "You did good," he said simply. "Real good." They rode back through increasing rain, arriving soaked but exhilarated. Anna's legs shook when she dismounted, muscles she didn't know she had protesting the new activity. But she helped Wade tend the horses without complaint, learning to remove the side saddle and rub Sally down properly. That evening, as rain drummed steadily on the roof, they sat closer to the stove than usual, steam rising from their drying clothes. Anna had made a stew from preserved beef and vegetables from the garden that was finally producing. The warmth of the meal and the accomplishment of the day created an unusual ease between them. You asked once why I came west, Wade said suddenly, staring into his coffee cup. Never gave you a proper answer. Anna waited, sensing the importance of his willingness to share. Had a farm in Ohio, small place, but good soil. Married my wife Sarah when we were both 18. Our boy, James, came a year later. His voice remained steady, but Anna saw his knuckles whiten around the cup. Cholera hit in 74, took them both in 3 days. Nothing I could do but watch. Wade, Anna breathed, but he continued. Sold the farm. Couldn't stand looking at it. Drifted for years. Working other men's land. Saving money. Figured if I came far enough west, started fresh enough, maybe I could build something without their ghosts in every corner. He looked up at her. Didn't work. Entirely. Still see them sometimes. But it's bearable now. Anna understood the gift of this confession, the trust it represented. My father was a dreamer, she offered in return. Always had a scheme that would make us rich, invested in a silver mine that didn't exist, a railroad that was never built, a merchant ship that sank before it left port. She smiled bitterly. When he died, the debts were more than the house was worth. Mother never forgave him, or me, for looking like him. That why she, Wade trailed off, sold me partly. I reminded her of failure, and I was another mouth to feed when she could barely feed herself. When Briggs offered money, Anna shrugged. I suppose I understand it, even if I can't forgive it. They sat quietly, listening to the rain. The kerosene lamp cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating a circle of intimacy in the darkness. I'm glad you bought my contract, Anna said finally. I know that sounds strange, but I'm glad too, Wade interrupted. Unusual for him. Place feels more like what I intended it to be, like it has a future instead of just being somewhere to hide from the past. Anna felt something shift between them, subtle but definite. Not romance, not yet, but possibility. Recognition of shared damage and shared strength. We make a good team, she ventured. We do. Wade agreed. He stood, stretching. Better turn in. That heifer's going to calve tomorrow, and I'll need your help. I don't know anything about calving. You didn't know anything about cattle driving this morning either. The smile was back, barely visible, but real. You'll learn. As Anna prepared for bed, she could still feel the rhythm of Sally's gait, still see the look on Wade's face when she'd turned that bull. 6 weeks ago, she'd been nothing a burden, a disappointment, an item for sale. Now she was becoming something else, a partner, a rancher, a woman who could move cattle ahead of a storm. She touched the small scar on her palm from her first encounter with barbed wire. It had healed clean, leaving a thin white line. Battle scars, she thought with satisfaction. Proof of transformation. Tomorrow she would learn about calving. Next week, Wade had promised to teach her to shoot the rifle that hung by the door, just in case she needed it for predators or emergencies. Each skill built her into someone new, someone capable. The rain continued through the night, steady and nourishing. The garden would benefit. The grass would grow thick for the cattle, and the water barrels would fill. Anna fell asleep thinking about butter profits and cattle prices, about the look in Wade's eyes when she'd succeeded, about the way he'd said we when talking about the future. She was earning her quarter share, but more than that, she was earning her place. Not through suffering or endurance, but through competence and partnership. It was more than she'd ever dared hope for when she'd stood in that town square, and it was only the beginning. The general store in town smelled of pickle brine and leather, coffee beans and lamp oil. Anna stood at the counter with her basket of eggs and cloth-wrapped butter rounds, watching Mr. Henderson mark figures in his credit ledger. Behind him, his wife sorted through a shipment of ribbons, occasionally glancing up with poorly concealed curiosity. 12 cents for the dozen eggs, Mr. Henderson announced, not looking up from his ledger. $1.20 for the 6 pounds of butter. Anna had been coming to town alone for 2 weeks now, Wade trusting her with the wagon and the monthly trading. She'd accepted Henderson's prices the first time, grateful to complete the transaction without incident. But she'd been watching, listening, learning the rhythms of commerce. Mrs. Garrett got 15 cents for her eggs yesterday, Anna said calmly. And her butter isn't half as well worked as mine. Henderson's pen paused. He looked up, really seeing her for the first time since she'd entered. Mrs. Garrett has been trading here for 10 years, and her butter has been grainy for all 10 of them. From what I hear, Anna kept her voice pleasant but firm. Mine is sweet cream, properly salted, and will keep twice as long. You know it, and so do your customers who've been asking for it specifically. Mrs. Henderson had stopped sorting ribbons entirely, watching the negotiation with interest. The eggs, Henderson began, are fresh today, gathered at dawn. Everyone candled and checked. No blood spots, no cracks. Anna lifted her chin slightly. 15 cents for the dozen, $1.40 for the butter. That's fair for quality. Henderson's mouth worked as if tasting something sour. Anna knew what he was thinking. She was that woman, the one who'd been sold in the town square, now living in sin with Wade Morrison. What right did she have to negotiate? Those are city prices, he protested. Then I'll take them to Morrison's Junction. They have a store there too, and it's only another hour's drive. Anna began to repack her basket, moving with deliberate calm, though her heart raced. Now, wait. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward, shooting her husband a meaningful look. The butter is exceptional. Henry, Mrs. Coleman specifically asked if we'd have more this week. Henderson grumbled but adjusted his ledger. 14 cents for eggs, $1.35 for butter. Done. Anna unpacked the basket again, hiding her satisfaction. It was 20 cents more than she'd gotten last time. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. As Henderson recorded the credit in Wade's account, Mrs. Henderson leaned closer. There's to be a harvest dance Saturday next. Everyone's welcome. She paused meaningfully. Everyone? Anna understood the weight of that invitation and the test it represented. Thank you. I'll speak to Mr. Morrison about it. She selected her purchases carefully with her increased credit thread. Needles, carbolic acid for the medical supplies, and after hesitation, a length of blue ribbon that matched her eyes. A tiny extravagance, but her first in months. The drive home took 2 hours, the wagon heavy with sacks of flour and cornmeal, a bolt of sturdy cloth for new work shirts, and oil for the lamps. Anna found herself humming, pleased with her negotiation and the weight of earned money in the homestead's account. She found Wade in the barn, sharpening the scythe for tomorrow's hay cutting. He listened to her report on the trading with apparent satisfaction. Henderson's a penny pincher, he said. Good that you stood your ground. Mrs. Henderson invited us to the harvest dance Saturday, Anna mentioned, trying to sound casual. Wade's hand stilled on the whetstone. Did she now? We don't have to go. I know it might be folks talking about us. Wade resumed sharpening, the rhythmic whisper of stone on steel filling the barn. There's always talk. Question is whether we let it matter. The next morning dawned hot and still, perfect for hay cutting. Anna watched Wade work from the garden where she weeded the bean rows, his shirt darkening with sweat as he swung the scythe in steady arcs. The hay fell in neat windows, ready to dry in the sun. She was carrying water to him when it happened. Wade took the dipper gratefully, drank deep, then returned to cutting. But the scythe had shifted while resting, and his grip was off. The blade caught wrong in thick grass, twisted, and his hand slipped down the handle onto the cutting edge. The curse that escaped him was sharp as the blade. Blood welled immediately, running red down his palm and dripping onto the fallen hay. Let me see, Anna demanded, dropping the water bucket. It's nothing. Let me see. She took his hand firmly, her stomach churning at the depth of the cut across his palm. But her mother had taught her this much, at least, how to tend wounds when no doctor was available. Come to the house, now. For once, Wade didn't argue. Anna sat him at the kitchen table and fetched the medical supplies. The carbolic acid she'd just bought would clean it, though it would burn like fire. She warned him, then poured it over the wound. Wade's jaw clenched, but he made no sound. It needs stitching, Anna said, examining the gaping edges. I can do it, but do it. Anna threaded a needle with silk thread, boiled it briefly, then set to work. Her mother had taught her to sew flesh as neatly as fabric, though she'd only practiced on chickens before. Wade watched her face rather than his hand as she worked, taking tiny, careful stitches. You've done this before, he observed, his voice slightly strained. Watched my mother do it. She was a midwife, sometimes, when people couldn't afford the doctor. Anna tied off another stitch. She taught me useful things, even if she didn't think I was useful myself. When she finished, she wrapped the hand in clean cloth and secured it with court plaster. Their faces were close as she worked, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, smell the hay and honest sweat on his skin. Thank you, Wade said quietly, flexing his fingers slightly to test the bandage. You'll need to keep it dry for a few days. No heavy work. Can't afford no heavy work. Hay needs cutting. I'll do it. Wade laughed, short and disbelieving. You can't handle a scythe. Then teach me. Anna met his eyes steadily. That's what partners do. Cover for each other when needed. Something shifted in his expression, a softening she hadn't seen before. All right, but if you cut yourself, we're both in trouble. She learned the scythe that afternoon. Its weight and rhythm different from anything she'd done before. Her swings were shorter than Wade's, less efficient, but the hay fell. By evening, she'd cleared half of what Wade would have done, but it was enough to keep them on schedule. Saturday came quickly. Anna wore her better dress and the new blue ribbon in her hair, which she'd washed and pinned up properly for the first time in weeks. Wade had put on his church clothes, a proper shirt and vest, though he refused to leave his gun behind. Habit, he explained, though Anna understood it was more than that. It was armor of a sort. The barn at the Jacobson place glowed with coal oil lamps when they arrived. Fiddle music spilled out into the evening air, along with laughter and the sound of dancing feet. Anna's stomach tightened as they entered. The music didn't stop, but conversations paused. Eyes tracked them across the barn. Anna recognized several faces from town misses. Coleman, who bought her butter, the blacksmith who'd fixed their wagon wheel, young Tom Bailey, who delivered telegrams, and there, near the punch bowl, stood her mother's friend, Mrs. Whitaker, whispering urgently to two other women. Chin up, Wade murmured beside her. We've got as much right to be here as anyone. But the whispers followed them. Anna caught fragments, sold in the square. Living in sin. Her poor mother. That Morrison man. The women gave her wide berth, as if scandal might be contagious. Anna stood beside the refreshment table, trying to appear unconcerned while Wade spoke with John Garrett about cattle prices. She was reaching for a cup of cider when Mrs. Whitaker approached, flanked by her allies. Anna Thorne, she said, voice carrying deliberately. We're all so concerned about your situation. My situation. Anna kept her voice level. Living out there, unmarried, with a man, surely you understand how it looks. The barn had grown quieter, people pretending not to listen while straining to hear every word. Anna set down the cup carefully, turned to face Mrs. Whitaker fully. I work for Mr. Morrison. I keep his house, tend his garden, help with his cattle. I'm earning my keep honestly, which is more than I could say when I lived with my mother, being treated as a burden. But surely the impropriety, the only impropriety I've experienced, Anna said, voice clear and carrying, was being sold like livestock in the town square. Mr. Morrison paid my debt and offered me honest work. If that offends you more than my mother selling me, then I question your priorities, Mrs. Whitaker." The silence that followed was complete. Even the fiddle had stopped. Wade appeared at her elbow, his bandaged hand gentle on her arm. "I believe this is a dancing tune starting up," he said calmly. "Would you do me the honor, Miss Thorne?" Anna took his offered arm, let him lead her onto the dance floor. Others slowly joined them, the moment passing but not forgotten. As they danced carefully because of his injured hand, Wade leaned close enough to speak privately. "You've got more strength than anyone here," he said, "including me." "I'm tired of apologizing for surviving," Anna replied. "Then don't. Never apologize for that." They danced 3 more songs before leaving. Earlier than planned, but with dignity and tact. The ride home was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that comes after standing together against the world. As Wade helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingered on her waist a moment longer than necessary. "You did good tonight." "We did good," Anna corrected. In the lamplight by the door, she saw him smile, that rare, transformative expression that made him look years younger. "We did." Inside, Anna carefully removed the blue ribbon from her hair, folding it for another day. She'd claimed her place tonight, not the one society would have chosen for her, but the one she'd chosen for herself. It wasn't comfortable or easy, but it was hers. Tomorrow there would be more hay to cut, more butter to make, more skills to learn. But tonight, she'd stood her ground and found Wade standing beside her. Partnership. She was learning. Meant more than sharing work. It meant sharing strength when one of them wavered. Anna was scattering corn for the chickens when she saw the dust cloud rising from the eastern road. 2 riders, moving at a steady pace that suggested purpose rather than casual travel. The morning sun was behind them, making identification impossible. But something in her stomach clenched with premonition. She finished with the chickens, trying to convince herself it was nothing. Travelers passed by occasionally, though the homestead sat well off the main track. But as the riders drew closer, that hope died. She recognized the set of shoulders on the lead horse, the ostentatious silver conchos on the saddle of the second, her mother and Harlan Briggs. Anna's hand stilled on the feed bucket. For a moment, she considered running to find Wade, who was checking the fence lines in the north pasture. But no, this was her battle. Her past come calling. She wouldn't hide behind him. She walked deliberately to the house, set the bucket by the door, and waited. The Winchester Model 1873 hung on pegs just inside the doorway, loaded as always. She'd learned to shoot it just last week, Wade's patient instruction overcoming her initial fear of the weapon. She didn't reach for it yet, but knowing it was there steadied her nerves. The riders entered the yard, their horses' hooves raising small clouds in the dry earth. Her mother looked older, thinner, her mouth set in familiar lines of disapproval. Briggs had dressed for the occasion in his best coat, though the same grease stains marked the lapels. He dismounted first, moving with the assumed authority of a man who expected obedience. "Anna," her mother said, remaining mounted. "We've come to correct a mistake." "There's no mistake," Anna replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "The sale wasn't legal," her mother continued, as if Anna hadn't spoken. "I've consulted with Attorney Bradshaw in town. A daughter cannot be sold like property. The contract is void." Briggs took a step forward. "Which means she returns to her rightful guardian, you, Mrs. Thorne. And you've agreed to honor our original arrangement." "I've agreed to nothing," Anna said. "You don't have a choice in this," her mother snapped. "You're an unmarried woman. You belong under your family's authority until you wed." "What family?" Anna felt years of suppressed anger rising. "The mother who sold me for $200. That transaction was illegal." "But you kept the money." Anna's voice grew stronger. "Did Attorney Bradshaw tell you to return it? Have you brought it with you to give back?" Her mother's face flushed. "That's not the point. That's exactly the point. You sold me, collected payment, and walked away. Now that you've spent the money, you want to sell me again." Wade appeared around the corner of the barn, drawn by the voices. He took in the scene the visitors, Anna standing firm in the doorway and stopped by the water trough, close enough to intervene but far enough to let Anna handle this herself. His presence was support, not rescue, and Anna drew strength from it. "Mr. Morrison," Briggs addressed Wade directly, dismissing Anna. "Man to man, you understand this situation is untenable. The girl belongs with her mother." "Seems to me," Wade said mildly, "Miss Thorne is old enough to decide where she belongs." "The law," Briggs began. "The law says a contract was made and payment exchanged," Anna interrupted. "Mr. Morrison has the bill of sale you signed, Mr. Briggs, legal and binding, for a servant's indenture, not whatever this is." Briggs gestured dismissively at the homestead. "This is honest work," Anna said. "Which is more than you offered." Her mother dismounted then, approaching with the righteous indignation Anna remembered so well. "You're living in sin with this man. The whole county knows it. You've destroyed your reputation and shamed your family name." "What reputation?" Anna laughed, bitter and short. "The one you destroyed when you tried to sell me in the town square. When you announced to everyone that I was past marriageable age and useless. I was trying to secure your future. You were trying to get rid of me." The words came out flat, truthful. "I reminded you of Father, of his failures, of every disappointed hope you ever had. You couldn't sell me fast enough." Movement caught Anna's eye-wagon wheels on the road. The Jacobsons' buckboard appeared, then the Bailey's wagon behind it. The neighbors had seen the strangers heading for the Morrison homestead and followed, curious or concerned or both. "We have witnesses now," Briggs said with satisfaction. "The community can judge this improper arrangement." Anna looked at the gathering neighbors, some who had whispered about her at the dance, others who bought her butter and eggs. She saw Mrs. Henderson climb down from her wagon, and, surprisingly, old Mr. Garrett, who rarely left his ranch. This was the moment. Anna could submit, return to her mother's control, accept Briggs's indenture. It would be the proper thing, the expected thing. Instead, she stepped back into the house and lifted the Winchester from its pegs. Her mother gasped. Briggs stepped back, but Anna held the rifle across her body, not threatening, just present. The weight of it felt like truth in her hands. "I want everyone to hear this clearly," Anna said, her voice carrying across the yard. "I am not property. I am not a burden to be passed from one keeper to another. I work this land alongside Mr. Morrison as his partner. I earn my keep with my labor, honest labor that provides butter and eggs for your tables. Mrs. Henderson, I help bring in harvests that feed your livestock. Mr. Garrett," she looked directly at her mother, "you sold me. You took money for me like I was furniture or livestock. You don't get to reclaim me now that it suits your purposes." "The sale wasn't legal," her mother insisted, but her voice had lost its certainty. "Then return the money," Mrs. Henderson said unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at her. "If the sale wasn't legal, return Mr. Morrison's payment." That money is gone," Anna's mother admitted. "Debts had to be paid." "So you sold your daughter to pay debts, spent the money, and now want her back to sell again." "Mr. Garrett's voice was heavy with disapproval. "That doesn't sit right. She's my daughter." "No." Anna's voice cut through the morning air. "I stopped being your daughter the moment you counted out those bills in your kitchen while discussing my uselessness. I belong to no one but myself. I choose where I stay, and I choose to stay here." "You can't." Briggs started forward, but stopped when Anna shifted the rifle slightly. Not pointing it, never pointing it, but reminding him of its presence. "I can and I do. I'm of age. I'm unmarried by choice, and I'm free to work where I please. Mr. Morrison pays me fair wages for fair work. That's all anyone needs to know." Wade moved then, coming to stand at the foot of the porch steps. Not beside her, this was her fight, but close enough to show support. Miss Thorne has stated her position clearly. I think it's time for you folks to leave. This isn't over, Briggs said. I'll go to the sheriff. Go ahead, Wade said calmly. Show him the bill of sale you signed. Explain how you want to force a grown woman into servitude against her will. See how that plays out. Mrs. Jacobson spoke up from her wagon. Seems to me Anna's made her choice clear, and from what I can see, she's thriving here. Good butter, good eggs, honest work. What more does anyone need? Other neighbors murmured agreement. Anna saw the moment her mother realized she'd lost not just the argument, but any claim to sympathy or support. The community might gossip about Anna's arrangement with Wade, but they gossiped more about a mother who would sell her own daughter. You've made your bed, her mother said coldly. When this all falls apart, when he tires of you or you're left with nothing, don't come crying to me. I won't, Anna promised. I've learned to stand on my own feet. You taught me that. If nothing else. Her mother turned away, mounted her horse with Briggs's reluctant help. He looked back once, his face twisted with frustration at losing what he'd considered his property twice over. This is a mistake, her mother called as they turned to leave. You'll regret this choice. The only thing I regret, Anna said clearly, is that it took me 28 years to realize I had choices at all. The two riders departed, moving faster than they'd arrived, as if fleeing the scene of their defeat. The neighbors lingered, some offering quiet words of support, others just nodding before heading back to their own concerns. Mrs. Henderson was the last to leave. She climbed up to her wagon seat, then looked back at Anna. Bring extra butter next week. Mrs. Coleman specifically requested it. Yes, ma'am, Anna said, understanding the acceptance in that simple business transaction. When they were alone again, Anna carefully placed the Winchester back on its pegs. Her hands were shaking now. Delayed reaction to the confrontation. Wade stood in the doorway, watching her. You all right? He asked. I don't know. Anna sank into the rocking chair, suddenly exhausted. I thought I'd feel different. Triumphant. Maybe. Instead, I just feel empty. Wade pulled the other chair closer, sat down beside her. You just cut your last tie to the past. That's bound to feel strange. She's my mother, despite everything. She's my mother. And she failed you. That's on her, not you. They sat quietly as the morning sun climbed higher, warming the porch. Eventually, Wade spoke again. You handled that with more grace than I would have. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. He stood, stretched. Fence won't check itself. But, Anna, he paused, seeming to search for words. You belong here. Not because I bought your contract or because you've got nowhere else to go. You belong here because you've earned your place with your own hands and heart. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you different. He walked away before she could respond, leaving Anna alone with the truth of what had just happened. She'd faced her past, claimed her autonomy, and chosen her future. The girl who'd stood silent in the town square was gone. In her place sat a woman who knew her own worth and wasn't afraid to defend it. The chickens needed water, the garden needed weeding, and the butter wouldn't churn itself. Anna rose from the chair, ready to continue the life she'd chosen. Her mother was wrong, this wasn't a mistake. It was the first truly right thing Anna had ever done for herself. The rest of the day passed in careful normalcy. Anna went through her chores, mechanically feeding chickens, working butter, tending the garden, but her mind kept returning to the morning's confrontation. Wade had disappeared after checking the fences, giving her space she hadn't asked for but somehow needed. By evening, when he returned for supper, they moved around each other with unusual delicacy, as if the morning's events had left them both raw and uncertain. Anna had made beef stew with vegetables from the garden, taking extra care with the seasoning, needing to do something well after the emotional upheaval. They ate in near silence, The only sounds the clink of spoons against bowls and the distant lowing of cattle. The kerosene lamp cast a warm circle of light around the table, but it felt smaller somehow, as if the darkness pressed closer than usual. "Good stew," Wade said finally, pushing his empty bowl away. "Thank you." Anna rose to clear the dishes, needing movement, activity, anything but this weighted quiet. Wade remained at the table. Unusual for him. Normally he'd retreat to the porch with his coffee or tend to evening chores in the barn. Instead, he sat watching her work, his expression unreadable in the lamplight. "Anna?" Something in his tone made her pause. Dish towel in hand. He'd never quite said her name that way before. Careful. Considered. Important. "Sit down. Please." She dried her hands slowly, returned to her chair. Wade reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded document, the paper crackling as he smoothed it on the table between them. The legal seals and formal script were visible even in the dim light. "What is this? Read it." Anna pulled the lamp closer, bent over the document. The words swam before her eyes at first, whereas in party of the first part and other legal phrases, but then the meaning became clear. It was a deed transfer. Half of the homestead claim, 80 acres, was being transferred from Wade Morrison to Anna Thorne. "I don't understand," she said. Though she did. She just couldn't quite believe it. "I went to the county clerk 3 weeks ago," Wade said quietly. "Had this drawn up proper. It's all legal. The territory allows women to hold property in their own names. You just need to sign, and half this land becomes yours." Anna stared at the document, her mind struggling to grasp what this meant. Land. Her own land. Not her father's that was lost to debt. Not her mother's that was never really theirs, but hers. Legally. Indisputably hers. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Wade leaned back in his chair, his weathered face serious. "Because you've earned it. Every morning you're up before dawn, working. Your butter and eggs have brought in enough credit to see us through winter. You've learned to ride, to work cattle, to read this land like you were born to it. This place is as much yours as mine now. But the Homestead Act, you need to hold it for 5 years. 3 years done, 2 to go. We file as adjacent claims with shared improvements. The law allows it. County clerk says it happens regular when families expand their holdings." Anna touched the paper with trembling fingers. This is valuable land." "It is." Wade's voice was steady. "Which is why you should have it. Or half. Anyway. But what if I—" She stopped, unable to voice the possibility of leaving. "That's the point." Wade leaned forward now, his eyes intense in the lamplight. "I never wanted you to feel trapped here. Never wanted you to stay because you had nowhere else to go. If you have your own land, your own legal stake, then you're free. Free to stay. Free to go. Free to choose. You're giving me 80 acres so I can leave. I'm giving you 80 acres so you can stay because you want to, not because you have to." He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she'd learned meant he was struggling for words. "That first day, in town, I bought your contract because I couldn't stand seeing someone's freedom sold. But then I brought you here, and in a way, I just made a nicer cage. This," he tapped the deed, "this breaks that cage." Anna felt tears burning behind her eyes. No one had ever given her anything without expecting something in return. Her father's gifts always came with disappointment, her mother's with obligation. But this was pure freedom, wrapped in legal paper and sealed with wax. "What if I sign this and leave tomorrow?" Wade's jaw tightened, but he met her eyes steadily. "Then you'd have 80 acres to sell or work as you see fit. Probably get enough from the sale to set yourself up anywhere you want." "That doesn't seem fair to you." "Fair." Wade laughed, short and sharp. "You want to talk about fair? You've taken this half-built, failing homestead and made it into something real. You've brought in money, kept us fed, made this place into something that might actually last. You faced down your mother and Briggs this morning with more courage than I've seen in most men. Fair would be giving you all of it, but I'm too selfish for that." Anna stood abruptly, walked to the window. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. The land stretched out invisible in the darkness, but she knew every rise and dip of it now, every fence post, every draw where the cattle liked to shelter. "I don't want to leave," she said to the window. "Then don't." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" She turned to face him. Wade had risen too, standing by the table, his hands careful at his sides. In the lamplight, she could see the vulnerability in his face, the fear he was trying to hide, the hope he didn't want to show. "I stopped wanting to leave months ago," Anna admitted. "That day you taught me to move cattle. When Sally knew what to do and I just had to trust her, that's when I knew. This place, this life, it's what I want." "But Wade..." "But what?" "But I'm afraid of wanting it too much, of thinking it's mine when it could all disappear. My father taught me that how quickly what you think is yours can vanish." Wade moved then, crossing the small space between them. He didn't touch her, just stood close enough that she could smell the leather and hay scent of him, feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Your father was a dreamer who made promises he couldn't keep," he said softly. "I'm just a rancher offering you dirt and grass and hard work, but it's real, and it's documented, and no one can take it from you, not even me. Why are you doing this? Really?" Wade was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Because somewhere between teaching you to string wire and watching you face down that bull, I realized something. This place only feels like home when you're in it. These past months, watching you grow strong, seeing you claim your spot here, it's been like watching the sun come up after 8 years of darkness." Anna's breath caught. "Wade, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "This isn't a trade or a bargain. The land is yours regardless. But Anna, I need you to know." He stopped, struggling. "I need you to know that if you stay, it's not just as a partner or hired help. Not anymore. Not for me." The kitchen was utterly still, even the stove seeming to hold its breath. Anna looked up at him, this man who'd bought her freedom and then insisted on giving it back to her, piece by piece. She saw the signs of hard living in the lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair, the scarred hands that had built this homestead from nothing. But she also saw the gentleness he tried to hide, the loneliness he'd carried for 8 years, the hope he was afraid to voice. "I know," she whispered. "You do. You think I haven't noticed the way you found that side saddle just when I needed it. The books you bought in town because you remembered I said I missed reading. The way you stand back and let me fight my own battles but never leave me to fight alone." She reached up, touched his face gently. "I know. Wade, I've known for weeks." He caught her hand, held it against his cheek. And I choose to stay. Not because I have nowhere else to go. Not because you're giving me land. But because this is where I want to be. With you." Wade made a sound that might have been her name, might have been a prayer, and then his lips were on hers. The kiss was tentative at first, as if they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then Anna pressed closer, her arms going around his neck, and Wade pulled her against him with gentle desperation. They kissed by the cooling stove while the lamp flickered and the coffee grew cold on the table. It was nothing like the romantic tales Anna had read in her youth, no swooning or grand declarations. It was better. It was real. It was two damaged people choosing to build something together, not from obligation or necessity, but from want. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unsteadily, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "Sign the deed," he said softly. Now, before either of us loses our nerve." Anna laughed, shaky but genuine. She returned to the table, took up the pen he offered, and signed her name on the line marked clearly in the county clerk's precise handwriting. Wade signed as witness. then folded the document carefully. "I'll file it in town next week," he said. "Make it official." "Wade." Anna remained at the table, looking up at him. "What happens now?" He considered the question seriously, as he did everything. "Now we go on as we have been. We work the land, build the herd, make this place profitable, but we do it as equals, true partners." "Is that all?" Wade smiled then, that rare expression that transformed his entire face. "Well, I was hoping I might court you proper, take you to dinner in town sometimes, dance with you at socials without folks whispering, maybe sit together on the porch in the evenings without feeling like we need excuses. And then we see where it leads." "No rush, no pressure, we've got time." Anna stood, moved back into his arms. "I'd like that. The courting, I mean, though you should know I've already decided where it leads." "Have you now?" "I have." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "It leads here, to this kitchen, this ranch, this life we're building. It leads home." Wade kissed her again, slower this time, with less desperation and more promise. Outside. A coyote called in the distance and the wind rustled through the grass. Inside, the lamp burned steady, illuminating the signed deed on the table, proof that Anna Thorne owned something real, something permanent, something no one could take away. When they finally parted, Wade banked the stove for the night while Anna secured the signed deed in the drawer where they kept important papers. They moved through the familiar evening routine, but everything felt different now, charged with possibility, warm with promise. As Anna prepared to retire to her room, Wade caught her hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For choosing to stay. For choosing this." Anna squeezed his hand. "Thank you for making it a choice." She went to her room then, but left the door slightly ajar. Not an invitation, not yet, but a promise that barriers were coming down, that the careful distance they'd maintained was no longer necessary. Through her window, she could see stars scattered across the prairie sky. Somewhere beneath them lay 80 acres of land with her name on the deed. But more than that, there was a future taking shape, one she'd chosen, one she'd earned, one she'd build with her own hands alongside a man who saw her worth and insisted she see it too. For the first time in her 28 years, Anna Thorne owned something that couldn't be taken away herself, her land, and her choice to stay. Morning came different now. Anna woke to the sound of Wade already moving in the kitchen, not tiptoeing as he used to, but moving with the comfortable certainty of someone who belonged there. She dressed quickly, pinning her hair up with the same blue ribbon she'd worn to the harvest dance, and found him at the table with coffee and the Sears Roebuck catalog spread before him. "Planning to buy the whole store?" she asked, pouring her own coffee. "Looking at windmills. The well's running lower than I'd like. If we're going to expand the garden next season like you want, we'll need better water access." He looked up, and his smile came easier now, warming his weathered features. "Morning." "Morning." She sat beside him, their shoulders touching as they bent over the catalog together. Such simple intimacy, but it made her heart quicken. "That's an expensive investment." "We can afford it." The harvest was better than expected. Wheat brought $18 an acre. "And with your butter and egg money, we're ahead for the first time since I claimed this land." Anna ran her finger down the column of figures Wade had penciled in the margin. Profits. Real profits. Not fortune, but enough to build on. Enough to prove the homestead was viable. "We could get a better stove, too," she suggested. "This one's about worn through. And a proper bed frame for your room. That rope bed's not fit for—" He stopped, color rising in his neck. "For a landowner," Anna finished, smiling at his discomfort. "You're right. A person who owns 80 acres deserves better than sagging ropes and moldy straw." They were still discussing improvements when horses sounded in the yard. Wade rose, hand moving automatically toward the rifle. then relaxing as he looked out the window. It's Reverend Palmer. Circuit preacher comes through once a month. Anna's hands flew to her hair, checking the pins. I should make fresh coffee. And there's cake from yesterday. Anna? Wade caught her hand as she stood. He's not here to judge. Palmer's a good man. The Reverend was younger than Anna expected, perhaps 40, with kind eyes and trail dust on his black coat. He accepted coffee gratefully, complimented Anna's dried apple cake, and shared news from his circuit births, deaths, marriages, the ordinary miracles of prairie life. And how are things here? He asked finally, his gaze moving between them with gentle curiosity. I heard you had some visitors recently. Your mother, Miss Thorne. She came and went? Anna said simply. We've resolved our differences. I see. Palmer sipped his coffee thoughtfully. You know, in my travels, I've noticed something. The prairie has a way of stripping away pretense. Out here, what matters isn't what people say about you, but how you treat your land, your animals, your neighbors. He paused. And each other. Wade shifted in his chair. Reverend, if you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything, but I am authorized to perform marriages, should anyone have need of such services. Palmer pulled out his watch. I'll be here for another 2 hours, visiting the Jacobsons next. After that, not back for another month. He finished his coffee, thanked Anna again for the cake, and moved toward the door. Then he turned back. Of course, if someone were to need my services today, they'd want witnesses, the Jacobsons, perhaps the Baileys. Mrs. Henderson mentioned she might stop by their place this morning. When he'd gone, Wade and Anna stood in the kitchen, not quite looking at each other. He wasn't subtle, Anna said finally. Palmer never is. Wade turned to face her fully. Anna, we don't have to. I know. We could wait. Court properly for a year, like I said. Let people get used to the idea. We could, Anna moved closer to him, or we could acknowledge what we both already know, that this is permanent, that we're building something together that's more than a business arrangement. Wade touched her face gently, his calloused thumb tracing her cheekbone. You sure no big wedding, no fancy dress, no family? I have everything I need, Anna said firmly. A home, land, work I'm proud of, and a partner I choose. What else matters? Wade kissed her then, soft and certain. When he pulled back, his eyes held that warmth she'd grown to treasure. I'll need to fashion rings. I've got some horseshoe nails in the barn. It's what most folks use out here, unless you'd rather wait. Order something from the catalog. Horseshoe nails are perfect. They're honest. Real. An hour later, they stood in the Jacobsons' parlor while Reverend Palmer read from his worn Bible. Wade had shaped 2 rings from horseshoe nails, heating and bending them in the barn's forge, filing them smooth. They weren't pretty, but they were strong and would last. Mrs. Jacobson had produced a handful of late wildflowers for Anna to hold. Mrs. Henderson stood as witness, having arrived with suspicious promptness when Palmer sent word. Even old Mr. Garrett was there, grumbling about the interruption to his day but wearing his church coat nonetheless. Do you, Wade Morrison, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live? I do. Wade's voice was steady, certain. And do you, Anna Thorne, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live? I do. The words came out stronger than she expected, filling the small room. They exchanged the horseshoe nail rings, the metal warm from Wade's pocket. Palmer pronounced them married, and Wade kissed her brief and proper in front of witnesses, but with a promise of more. Mrs. Henderson had brought a cake, somehow having had time to bake one despite the unexpected ceremony. They ate it in the Jacobsons' yard while neighbors who happened to be passing by stopped to offer congratulations. It was nothing like the grand weddings Anna had witnessed in town, but it was theirs, and it was real. That evening, back at their homestead, their home, Wade and Anna worked side by side preparing supper. There was new ease between them now, the last walls down. As Anna reached for plates, Wade caught her hand, examining the horseshoe nail ring. "I'll get you a proper ring someday. Gold, maybe even a stone." "Don't you dare." Anna twisted the ring, already fond of its weight. "This ring was made by your hands, from materials that built this ranch. It's worth more than gold to me." After supper, they sat on the porch in the two rocking chairs Wade had built, no longer carefully separated but pulled close enough that they could hold hands if they chose. Wade produced his harmonica, playing Beautiful Dreamer and Home on the Range while the sun set over their land. "Letter came for you at the general store," Wade said eventually, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "Henderson gave it to me yesterday. I forgot in all the planning." Anna recognized her mother's handwriting immediately. She held the letter unopened, feeling its weight, not just physical but emotional. Wade watched her carefully. "You going to read it?" Anna stood, walked to the stove, and lifted the iron plate. Without ceremony, she dropped the unopened letter onto the glowing coals. It caught immediately, the paper curling and blackening, her mother's words turning to ash and smoke. "Nothing she has to say matters anymore," Anna said, replacing the plate. "That life is done." Wade pulled her onto his lap in the rocking chair, and she curled against him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. His hand stroked her hair, loosening the pins until it fell around her shoulders. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "None." Anna lifted her head to look at him. 6 months ago, I was nothing. Property to be sold. Now I'm Anna Morrison, landowner, rancher's wife, maker of the finest butter in 3 counties. Don't forget chicken wrangler and fence mender," Wade added, smiling. "And expert cattle mover. Don't sell me short." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the darkening prairie. In the distance, their cattle lowed contentedly. The chickens had gone to roost. The garden lay ready for tomorrow's work. "I've been thinking about next season," Anna said. "If we expand the garden like we planned, add those dairy cows you mentioned, maybe some pigs. Already planning to build our empire." "Our empire," Anna repeated, savoring the words. "I like the sound of that." Wade reached for the Montgomery Ward catalog they'd left on the porch. "If we're building an empire, we'll need supplies. Let's see seeds for spring planting, that windmill we discussed, maybe some apple trees for an orchard." They planned until the stars came out, bright and countless above the prairie. Anna had never seen stars like this in town, never understood how vast the sky could be. Now she knew every constellation, had learned to tell time by their movement, to predict weather by their clarity. "We should go in," Wade said eventually, though he made no move to rise. "We should." Anna agreed, equally still. They sat together in the chair Wade had built, on the porch he'd constructed, looking out over land they owned together. Tomorrow would bring work it always did. Fences to mend, cattle to tend, butter to churn, accounts to balance. But tonight, they had this, the quiet satisfaction of chosen belonging, the deep peace of being exactly where they wanted to be. "You know what I thought when I first saw you?" Wade asked suddenly. "Standing in that square, refusing to cry even though your world was ending." "What?" "I thought, there's someone who doesn't know her own strength yet. But when she finds it, she'll be unstoppable. And now I know I was right." He kissed the top of her head. "You're the strongest person I know, Anna Morrison." Anna twisted to look up at him. "We're strong together. That's what matters." Later, when they finally went inside, Anna paused at what had been her bedroom door. Wade stopped too, uncertain. They'd been married only hours, There was no rush, no expectation. But Anna took his hand, drew him with her. "No more separate rooms," she said simply. "We're partners in everything now." The next morning brought rain, gentle and steady, perfect for the newly planted winter wheat. Anna woke in Wade's arms, her horseshoe nail ring catching the dim morning light. Through the window, she could see the garden, the barn, the endless prairie stretching to the horizon. All of it theirs, built by their own hands, protected by their own strength. She thought of the woman she'd been 6 months ago, standing in the town square being sold like livestock. That woman could never have imagined this, not just the land or the security, but the belonging, the absolute certainty of being wanted, valued, chosen. Wade stirred beside her, his arm tightening around her waist. "You're thinking too loud," he murmured against her neck. "I'm thinking about happiness," Anna said. "How I didn't know what it looked like until now." "What does it look like?" Anna turned in his arms, traced the lines around his eyes, the silver in his hair. "Like work that matters, like land that's ours, like choosing to build something together." She kissed him softly. "Like home." Outside, the rain continued, blessing their land with the moisture it needed. The seeds they'd planted would grow, the cattle would thrive, and their small empire would expand season by season. But inside, in the quiet morning light, Wade and Anna Morrison held each other and knew they'd already built the only thing that truly mattered, a place where two broken people had become whole, where loneliness had transformed into partnership, where a business arrangement had grown into love. The two rocking chairs on the porch would weather many seasons. Sometimes they'd sit empty while Wade and Anna worked the land. Sometimes they'd hold neighbors who came to buy butter or share news. But most evenings, they'd hold the Morrisons themselves, two people who'd found each other across a crowded town square and chosen to build something lasting from prairie grass, honest work, and the radical act of seeing each other's worth. Not bad for a useless woman and a wandering man. Not bad at all. I've told you Anna's story because I needed you to understand something I learned watching her transform from that broken woman in the town square. See, we spend so much time believing what others tell us about our worth that we're too old, too useless, too damaged to matter. Anna's own mother sold her for $200, convinced her daughter had no value beyond what someone would pay. But here's what that prairie taught me through Anna's eyes. Gratitude isn't about accepting scraps and being thankful. It's about recognizing when someone sees your true worth and offers you the chance to prove it to yourself. Wade didn't save Anna, he just handed her the tools and stepped back to watch her save herself. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the man who buys your freedom then insists on giving it back. Sometimes it's neighbors who stand witness when you claim your right to choose. Sometimes it's the partnership you build with someone who's equally broken but willing to heal alongside you. Anna found her family in that windswept homestead. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she finally had somewhere she wanted to stay. That's the difference between existing and living, the power to choose your own belonging.